With only 1 week left until what may become another historic summit between leaders of South Korea and the U.S., much attention is being drawn to the summit agenda. And the agenda is likely to be prearranged by now, as South Korea's top diplomats and nuclear envoys have returned home after holding a series of talks with their U.S. counterparts. Today, we discuss in depth on the possible Seoul-Washington summit agenda and future perspectives on resolving North Korea's nuclear issue. For that, Dr. Jung-yeop of Sejong Institute now joins us in the studio. Good to have you with us, Dr. Woo.
Thanks for having me today.
So the Deputy Chief of Seoul's National Security Office, Hyun-chong, has returned following his talks with his U.S. counterpart, who is a U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Charles Kupperman. Upon his arrival at the airport, Kim has stated that Seoul and Washington are on the same page with regards to the ultimate destination or roadmap in nuclear negotiations. How do you interpret his remarks?
So I think that there has been concerns raised from the media that there might be some differences with regard to the final destination of this denuclearization process of North Korea, because United States have been very firm on their stance in terms of achieving the CVID or FFVD. But South Korean government has not been strongly articulate that that is our goal, even though our government position has been following that international community's goal of denuclearization of North Korea because of North Korea's hesitance to negotiating with the international community on the term of achieving CVID or FFVD. So since the breakdown of the Hanoi, that's why there was a concerns raised among the media about the differences between the United States and the South Korea. And Mr. Kim yesterday mentioned was to dispel that kind of misbelief among the public and the media that there is difference between United States and South Korea. And our president, Moon Jae-in himself mentioned that achieving the achieving the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization is our goal. So there might be some difference how to achieve that goal, but since, as Mr. Kim mentioned, that there's no difference, I guess, from two governments.
So they do share the ultimate goal, which is North Korea's denuclearization. Now, Kim Hyun-chong has brushed off concerns on Seoul-Washington's disharmony, like you said. He said that talks went very well and good results are expected from the Moon-Trump summit. Do you think the same positive atmosphere is now prevailing in Washington as well?
There's a saying within Washington that the summit between two leaders from South Korea and the U.S. is necessary this time because they also want to dispel that kind of misbelief among the public about the differences between two allies. So I think that it is fairly positive from the U.S. side that holding the summit next week is very important for continuing to have good relations between two countries. Maybe we need to talk more in detail about how to achieve the denuclearization of North Korea. Also, there are some differences in burden sharing, trade issues. But as an allied countries for more than 65 years, I think the two countries can solve out peacefully and in harmony.
I really hope so, too. South Korea's top security chief, Jung-yeop, recently stated that the government is mulling to send an envoy to North Korea. Do you think the government would possibly send the envoy before the Moon-Trump summit? And if they really do send an envoy, regardless of the timing, what would the envoy talk about with his or her North Korean counterpart?
So after Hanoi, President Trump made a phone call to President Moon Jae-in to talk to Kim Jong-un, and maybe he wanted to deliver some message to Kim Jong-un via our President Moon Jae-in, and he also expects that some kind of message can be delivered through President Moon Jae-in. That is our government role as a facilitator. So I think that our government has tried to reach out to North Korea before the summit, But apparently that, as Mr. Jung-yeop mentioned in National Assembly yesterday, that there is no positive response yet from North Korea because they might need more time to review what went wrong at Hanoi. So I think that it might be difficult or it's unlikely that we can send a special envoy before the summit, but I think that doors are still open and there's still a window of time that we can send because you can just go up and meet the North Korean counterpart. Right. So I think that if we can meet any high-level officials from North Korea with regard to the denuclearization or other issues pending on the Korean Peninsula, it might help President Moon's position in negotiate with President Trump this time. But even though we don't have summit before the summit on April 11th, I think it's still fine because everyone knows that North Korea might need more time to review their own process.
Now, diplomatic efforts are continuing to resolve this North Korea's nuclear issue. But interesting fact is that the efforts recently are mostly top-down in top-down approach, summits first and then follow-up measures or meetings later. Now, do you think the part of the main goals of this Moon-Trump summit is to open doors to inter-Korean summit as well as a North Korea-U.S. summit?
I think it is generally agreed within the U.S. that top-down approach is necessary when you deal with the North Korea because of North Korea's very unique government structures and the governing system that no other person but Chairman Kim can discuss the denuclearization process of their country. So United States have been saying that it might be great if they can have very meaningful working level negotiations before they have summit between two leaders. But because of North Korea's very unique governing structure, it is inevitable that the United States has to have a summit to continue to have a discussion on the denuclearization front. So I think that now the structure of the negotiation between U.S. and North Korea is made at the leaders level that I think it might be necessary for Korea and the U.S. to discuss at the presidential level to discuss the North Korean issues because not many people can be accessing the information that they have because most important talks are between the leaders these days. So I think that it's different from the traditional approaches and traditional diplomatic styles. But I think the U.S. realized that it is necessary at this juncture that you have to talk to Chairman Kim Jong-un himself.
So there are quite solid reasons behind this top-down approach. Now, Washington looked quite, it looked quite confusing in terms of its North Korea policy, with President Trump showing disharmony with top North Korea negotiators in Washington. But Secretary of State Pompeo recently stated that he hopes for a third North Korea-U.S. summit within a few months. Does this mean that U.S.-North Korea strategy now became a bit clearer? Because that statement coming from Pompeo sounds a bit stronger than what he used to say before.
I think the U.S. has continued to have this stance on the negotiations. So they think that engagement is necessary. But at the same time that they say that they have to keep the sanctions intact because they believe that sanction is the only way to get North Korea to the negotiation. That is why they say both engagement and keeping the sanction at the same time. So in the past, when you say engagement, they usually lower the pressure on the sanctions. And if you heighten the pressure on the sanctions, they usually don't talk about engagement. So that is why it is somewhat confusing to the general public because United States is saying engagement and keeping sanctions at the same time. But as I just mentioned that U.S. believe that North Korea needs more time to review their decision-making process. So I think the United States is sending the message to North Korea that it might be better, it might be in North Korea's interest to come back to the table at the earlier stage because if time goes by like too too long, then it might be difficult for North Korea to come back with a negotiation position as before. So I think that United States is sending the message that it's in North Korea's interest to come back to the negotiation earlier, but at the same time, it also sends the message that U.S. is going to keep the sanctions as is.
Now, what other issues do you expect to be brought to the table during the Moon-Trump summit? For instance, the defense sharing cost. Today, Korea's National Assembly ratified a deal with the U.S. on sharing the defense costs, and Seoul will contribute roughly $915 million this year to help cover the expense of stationing U.S. troops on the peninsula. What other issues do you think will be brought to the table at the summit?
So the burden sharing that is ratified at the National Assembly today was just a one-year deal. That means that right after we had a ratification at the National Assembly, we might need to start another negotiation for 2020. So United States has not confirmed yet what kind of formula that they want from the future burden sharing between the United States and South Korea. And some said in the United States that it's going to be like cost plus 50%, which acting Defense Secretary Shanahan denied at their Congress. But he also mentioned that fair share should be given by the hosting countries. So we had these challenges, and since President Trump is very keen on this issue, that it is safe to expect that he's going to mention this issue. And at the same time, that there's, from the U.S. point of view, they need better Korea-Japan relations. So probably United States is going to emphasize the trilateral security cooperation between Korea, U.S., and Japan, and which is not comfortable issue for South Korea. And also trade issue is going to be brought up. So like tariff on the cars and the steels are still pending. So I think that it is very important that President Moon persuade President Trump that like tariff on cars or steel is not good for, not beneficial mutually for United States and South Korea.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un remains silent, but he recently visited the Samjiyon County, which is a place known to, which Kim Jong-un is known to visit every time he needs to make a major political decision. What are some of the implications of his visit there? So
there's going to be their most important committee meeting next week, which is April 11th. At 11th in North Korea. So I think this kind of like visit is some implications that he's going to change something with regard to their constitution or his nominal position, because he is the head of the country, but the nominal head of the North Korea is a different person. Right. It's a Kim Jong-un. So I think that they might change something in their constitution or governing system. So to make that kind of like important changes in their governing system, that is why Kim Jong-un might visit that county to make some implications that there's going to be something next week.
Now, Kim Jong-un's post-Hanoi strategy, or should I say North Korea's post-Hanoi strategy, is yet to be announced. What kind of strategy do you expect from the North? But I do have to mention, I know this is a big question to ask, but we only have about 30 seconds. So
United States has very firm on their demand to North Korea. So I think now North Korea's choice is whether to accept or going to make another proposal to the United States. So I think that since Kim Jong-un himself only can make a decision in North Korea, I think he needs more time to to think on what kind of strategy is best achieving his goal of leading his country. So I think maybe Kim Jong-un himself does not know what's the best strategy right now.
So he may not be quite ready yet. All right, Dr. Ru, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.